Okay, hey everybody, this is Mark. It's Friday, December 4, 2020, 11:15 Eastern Standard Time here in South Carolina. I'm going to be giving you a kind of a big picture of the election, where we are and where it could be going. I'm pretty far out, but I'm on the side of like a little road here, so and there has been some traffic, so if you see me, pausing, it might be what's going on. Okay. First of all, I want to go back to 2010, the Ivory Coast, Côte d'Ivoire. They had an election. Laurent Gbagbo was president. There was an agreement made whereby they would have a new election. They'd been putting the election off for a while, and Alassane Ouattara would be running. Gbagbo's power base, and I'm probably mispronouncing these names, his power base was kind of down near the coast in the southern part of the country, and Ouattara, his power base was more to the north. Different types of ethnic splits in the country. Okay, they had the election, and there had been some violence and stuff like that before the election, but what ultimately happened was the results were contested. The media declared Ouattara the winner because he was the favorite. Now remember, or know, Ouattara was acquainted with the president of France at the time, Sarkozy. And keep in mind, Ouattara essentially was an IMF, International Monetary Fund, frontman. Okay. So the media declared him the winner, but that wasn't following their constitutional process. So a guy came out and made an announcement that no, that's not the case. Ultimately, what happened is both Gbagbo and Ouattara got inaugurated for that next term, and Gbagbo refused to leave power. He believed the Constitution was on his side. And so ultimately, Gbagbo got ousted by French troops by order of Sarkozy, and then he was declared to be a strong man and a war criminal, and he got shipped off to Europe, and Ouattara was left in charge. Remember that as we're looking at what's going on here in the United States now. Okay, I want this to kind of be a standalone video. I'm not going to go over everything that I've talked about in previous videos, but I would like you to understand what happens, right? So the President of the United States is decided by the Electoral College. Electoral votes, each state has as many electoral votes as it has both senators and congressional representatives combined. Most states go, you can kind of tell that they always vote Democrat or they always vote Republican, so these states usually aren't ones to worry about. It's not really worth campaigning there, so candidates usually campaign in states that swing back and forth. And the magic number you have to get to is 270, because there's 538 total electoral votes between all of the 100 senators, the 435 congressmen. Each one is equivalent to an electoral vote. Plus, they have 3 electoral votes for Washington, D.C., even though Washington, D.C. does not, it's not a state, doesn't have senators and congressmen. So the 100 plus 435 plus 3 adds up to 538. Half of that would be 269. You have to have more than half in the Electoral College, so the magic number is 270. Okay, so going into any presidential election, you can look at it and say, all right, this 100, 150 is going to definitely go for this guy. This 100, 150 electoral votes definitely going to go for that guy. And you have the swing states, and there's a lot of electoral targeting and demographic analysis that goes into it to see just how volatile the states are, what their issues are. Some of these states, they will vote split ticket. They'll vote for a Republican for president, a Democrat for senator, but in individual districts, they'll be voting for Republican for congressman, and then a Democrat in the state senate. So it depends. Some of them are very volatile. Some of them it depends on the circumstances of that particular election. Okay, anybody advising a presidential candidate understands this, and they know specifically what states those are. And there's a list of states that in the 2020 election were swing states. The key ones I'm focusing in on and have been focusing in on are Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Georgia. Okay, so those states can go either way. And in each of those states, there is a city that is essentially under Democrat control. And so the Democrat plan was to steal the election in those Democrat cities. If you have enough votes in Milwaukee, it swings the entire state of Wisconsin. If you have enough votes in Atlanta, it swings the entire state of Georgia. And then by swinging 3 or 4 of these states, you swing the entire election. Okay, that's what's going on. That's what they did. They did it in different ways. Some of it was software, where you hit the button for one guy, but the little voting machine gives the vote to the other guy. Biden was getting his votes multiplied by a factor of like 1.3, and Trump was getting his votes multiplied by a factor of 0.7 in some places. Despite that, Trump was winning. And they figured out that they had a problem, which is why after everything closed on election night, all of a sudden trucks came in, I inhaled a bug. Trucks came in with ballots that were marked for Biden. Now, remember that in the U.S. election, you've got, in a presidential election year, you've got the top of the ticket is the president, vice president. Next is U.S. Senator. All places, every even-numbered year, they're electing their congressmen, so you've got a congressional representative. And then you've got more stuff down ticket. You've got perhaps state constitutional officers, like maybe your state governor, your state lieutenant governor, your state attorney general. You're going to have maybe some state senators. You're definitely going to have a state representative or state assemblyman for the lower house of the state legislature. You're probably going to have some county officers, maybe your county sheriff, for example, county commission, for example. You're going to have some more localized races. You're going to have school board. You're going to have judicial. All right, you're going to have a big, and there's going to be ballot questions. So you can have a big, long ticket starting at the president, senator, congressman, down to ballot questions. And depending on where you are, this might be 4 or 5 page ballot. Okay, these places came in, it was after midnight when they were counting the votes, and all of a sudden what they had was literally thousands of ballots that were just for Joe Biden. They didn't vote for the senator from that state. They didn't vote for a congressional representative in that district. They didn't vote for any of the state constitutional officers, the local officers, the state legislators. Just hit the button for Joe Biden. They just checked the thing for Joe Biden. This is what they brought in. People saw that. People saw the boxes come in. They saw these ballots. They looked at the ballots. They saw the ballots getting fed through the machine. In some cases, a stack of ballots got fed through the machine 3 and 4 times to get counted. Okay, so it wasn't just fraudulent votes. It was fraudulent votes getting counted multiple times. And by doing this, in Milwaukee, they swung Wisconsin. By doing this in Detroit, they swung Michigan. By doing this in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, they swung Pennsylvania. By doing this in Atlanta, they swung Georgia. By swinging those 4 states, they swung the entire presidential election. This also, now in some cases, some of the fraud also impacted the U.S. Senate, the U.S. House of Representatives, and in some cases it was down ticket fraud. It was just for the Democrats overall, so it impacted county sheriff races and stuff like that. But the main thing was the presidential race, because so many of these ballots were just marked for Joe Biden at the top. They were paper ballots, obviously fraudulent, just marked for Joe Biden. Okay, that's what they did. I've been posting real news about this on a WhatsApp group. And the sources on real news are news media and stuff like that I'm familiar with. And then I go back and I check what they're saying. So if they say, well, somebody filed a lawsuit, then I go digging into the court records and I get a copy of that lawsuit and I look at it, all right? So this is what's going on. There's plenty of evidence. There's real evidence. There's affidavits. An affidavit is a formal document. Somebody has filled it out. They've signed it. They've got their name, their address. You've got a person, a witness, saying, I saw this. This is direct evidence. It is admissible in court. You have affidavits. All right, the media, the mainstream media, is covering this up. They are burying it. They have said for 4 years that Trump is not a legitimate president. They have said for 4 years Russian collusion and all this other crap. Then they have tried to say that they've tried to take a little bit farther during the course of the summer that Trump needs to go, and that they're anticipating some type of funny business, which they should have been anticipating funny business because they were the ones planning it. Now they're trying to say that the election is legitimate and that Biden won and that Trump is not legitimate. In fact, Facebook even has Trump listed now as a politician, not as the president anymore. They've got his page listed like that. It's pretty ridiculous. Okay, at any rate, you've probably been following the story and maybe know that much. Where do we go from here? And this is significant. Okay, so yesterday what I did, I went right down through the list. The fight is going on in Georgia right now. Because of the problems, other problems with the election, they're having to have a runoff, and that runoff is going to help determine control of the U.S. Senate. But they're planning to do the runoff on the same machines that just multiplied Joe Biden's vote by 1.3 and Donald Trump's vote by 0.7. So that's not going to be a fair runoff. So you've got different people. So some people are saying, well, we just shouldn't vote in that. Well, if you don't vote for that, the Democrats show up and they get it. President Trump has advocated that people do in fact show up and vote. And I think the smart thing is go out and vote, but just make sure everybody understands that you're questioning the validity of the past election, you're questioning the validity of this election, and you're just trying to do your civic duty there. But anyway, the fight right now is in Georgia for other reasons. Okay, the state legislatures are the ones in charge of determining how the elections have to be run within each state. It's not a federal issue. You know, some countries, the federal government decides all of this crap. That's not how it works here in the United States. It's power is decentralized and the states decide that, which means the state legislatures have the hammer on setting election laws. These election laws were overruled by the people who were supposed to be carrying out the laws during this past election. So states violated their own election laws in this past election. What needs to happen, and by the way, the state legislatures are all in recess now, all right? Depending on which state it is, if it's a small state, there's maybe not a lot of business. They go into, for a few months, they meet shortly after the election in the new year. So some small states, they might meet for a few months early next year. Some states with a lot of business, they will meet for most of the entire 2 years between an election. And remember, the entire lower house of each state is elected every 2 years, just like the U.S. House of Representatives. However, pretty much all of the states, the legislatures, are essentially in recess right now. They're out on vacation. What has to happen is that the governors of these states have to call a special session of the state legislature, and then the state legislature has to investigate this election, and they have to issue instructions as to how the election, what's going to happen on this. And so they can say this election was messed up, we need to hold a new one. That would be very difficult to do in a short time frame. Another thing that they can do is they can hear all of the evidence and then decide which way the election would have gone had it not been for the fraud. To me, it's pretty obvious that those 4 swing states, and Georgia in particular, because that's what we're talking about right now, to me it's pretty obvious that Georgia would have gone for Trump had there not been the extensive cheating in the Democrat-controlled area in Atlanta.